Before death, Nichelle Nichols finally confirms what happened on Star Trek set. For decades, fans of Star Trek wondered what really went on behind the scenes of one of television's most groundbreaking shows. At the center of that curiosity was Nichelle Nichols, the actress who brought Lieutenant Uhura to life. In her final years, Nichols spoke more candidly than ever before about the highs and lows of her time aboard the Enterprise, the triumphs that made history, and the quieter battles fought far from the cameras. Long after the show had ended, she continued reflecting on what it had cost her, what it had given her, and why, in the end, she never regretted a single moment of it. Her story is not simply the story of a television role. It is the story of a woman who used a fictional starship to change the course of real history, and who spent the rest of her life proving that the change was worth fighting for. Nichelle Nichols was born Grace Dell Nichols on December 28, 1932, in the small town of Robbins, Illinois, one of 6 children. Her father worked in a factory and eventually served as the town's mayor and chief magistrate, a rare position of civic authority for a black man in that era, while her mother managed the household and raised the children with quiet discipline. As a young girl, Grace disliked her given name and asked her parents to change it. They settled on Nichelle, a name meant to evoke the idea of a victorious young woman, and it turned out to be a fitting choice for a girl who would go on to break barriers most people around her could not have imagined. The family later moved to Chicago's Woodlawn neighborhood, where Nichelle attended Englewood High School. Even before graduating in 1951, she had already discovered her love of performance, enrolling in dance lessons at the Chicago Ballet Academy at just 12 years old. That early training launched a career as a singer and dancer that took her across the United States and Canada, sharing stages with legendary bandleaders like Duke Ellington and Lionel Hampton. Life on the road as a young performer was demanding, filled with long tours, late nights, and constant travel. But it gave Nichols a toughness and a stage presence that would serve her for the rest of her career. By the late 1950s, Nichols was building real momentum in the entertainment world. She danced in the film adaptation of Porgy and Bess in 1959 and starred in the stage musical Kicks and Company, a production that, despite a short run, caught the eye of Hugh Hefner. Hefner hired her to perform as a singer at his Chicago Playboy Club, and from there she continued building a resume that included stage work in both Chicago and New York, along with modeling assignments on the side. She appeared in Ebony magazine on more than one occasion, toured extensively with big bands, and earned praise for a dramatic turn in James Baldwin's play Blues for Mr. Charlie. It was this blend of stage presence, singing talent, dance training, and dramatic range that eventually caught the attention of a television producer named Gene Roddenberry, first for a guest role on his short-lived series The Lieutenant, in an episode that dealt directly with racial prejudice, and later for something far bigger and far more permanent. When Star Trek debuted in 1966, it offered audiences something television had rarely attempted before: a vision of the future in which people of different backgrounds, nations, and even species worked side by side as equals aboard a single ship. Nichols played Lieutenant Uhura, the communications officer, with a composure and quiet authority that stood in sharp contrast to how black women were typically portrayed on American television at the time. Uhura wasn't a maid, a servant, or a background character defined by her race. She was a trained Starfleet officer whose expertise mattered directly to the ship's survival. Seated at a console on the bridge alongside the captain and the rest of the senior staff, for many viewers watching at home, especially young black girls who rarely saw themselves reflected in any position of authority on screen, that image was nothing short of revolutionary. It told them, without a single line of dialogue needing to explain it, that they too could occupy positions of intelligence, competence, and command. But behind that historic image, Nichols later admitted, the day-to-day experience of playing Uhura on set wasn't always as empowering as it appeared to audiences. She said in later interviews that her scenes were sometimes trimmed down after filming, her dialogue occasionally reduced to little more than a line or 2 per episode, and her presence in promotional photography inconsistent at best. Being part of something groundbreaking did not automatically mean the production always treated her role, or her contributions, as essential to the show. frustrated by these slights and by the sense that her character's potential was not being fully realized. Nichols seriously considered leaving Star Trek after its first season in order to pursue a long-standing dream of returning to Broadway. She approached Roddenberry directly and told him she intended to resign. Rather than argue with her or try to talk her out of it on the spot, he asked her to take the weekend to think it over fully, promising that he would respect and support whatever decision she reached by Monday morning. That weekend became one of the most consequential of her life. Nichols attended an NAACP fundraising event, where she was told that a fan wanted to meet her. She assumed it would simply be an enthusiastic viewer of the show. Instead, she found herself face to face with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who told her warmly that he and his family were devoted fans of Star Trek. He explained, in detail, that her role on the show mattered far beyond simple entertainment value, that seeing a black woman portrayed with dignity, intelligence, and quiet command on national television sent a powerful message into homes across the country about what was possible for the future. He reportedly compared her steady presence on the bridge of the Enterprise to a form of peaceful protest, one that could reach and shift more hearts than a speech alone ever could, precisely because it asked nothing of the viewer except to watch and imagine. Shaken and inspired by the conversation, Nichols returned to Roddenberry's office on Monday morning and shared what Dr. King had told her the night before. Moved by her account, Roddenberry reaffirmed his personal commitment to keeping the cast diverse and to giving Uhura a more meaningful, expanded role going forward. Nichols chose to stay with the show, a decision that would go on to influence generations of viewers long after the cameras stopped rolling. Whoopi Goldberg has spoken publicly more than once about watching Uhura as a child and realizing for the first time in her life that black women belonged among the stars, not on the margins of a frame, but at the center of the action. Mae Jemison, who later became the first black woman to travel into space aboard the space shuttle, has credited Nichols directly as one of the sources of inspiration that led her toward a career in science and space exploration. In 1968, an episode titled Plato's Stepchildren featured a scene between Uhura and Captain Kirk, played by William Shatner, that became one of the first interracial kisses ever broadcast on American television. NBC executives, wary of public backlash during a period of intense racial tension across the country, reportedly asked the cast to film an alternate version of the scene without the kiss included, intending to have a safer option ready in case the network decided the original was too controversial to air. According to Nichols, she and Shatner were both determined that the original scene should be the one broadcast, and by her account the alternate takes were deliberately shot in ways that made them unusable, leaving the network with little real choice but to air the version they had actually intended to avoid. When the episode finally aired, the public reaction defied the network's worst fears. Viewer mail ran overwhelmingly positive in the weeks that followed, and the scene has since been remembered as a genuine milestone in television history, not because of its length or its intensity, since the moment itself lasted only a few seconds, and was framed within the show's science fiction plot as the result of alien mind control, but because of what it quietly represented to millions of people watching at home. It showed two people of different races sharing an intimate, unremarkable moment on screen without shame, without apology, and without the scene making a spectacle of itself. For Nichols, that brief scene carried weight far beyond the page it was written on. She often said in later years that it stood alongside her original casting as proof that television, even in small and careful steps, had the power to nudge an entire culture forward. Star Trek's original run came to an end in 1969, but Nichols' association with Uhura and with a growing franchise built around her was far from over. She voiced the character in the animated Star Trek series that followed, finally getting the chance in one memorable episode to take command of the Enterprise, something she had long hoped for but never received during the original live-action run. She went on to reprise the role across 6 feature films, closing out her time on the big screen with Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. In 1994, she published her autobiography, Beyond Uhura, Star Trek and Other Memories, offering fans a closer and more personal look at her career, including the revelation that she had once been offered a role on the detective series Mannix during the final season of Star Trek, an opportunity Roddenberry declined to release her from her contract to pursue. Her career stretched well beyond the franchise that first made her a household name. She took on a rare dramatic turn in the blaxploitation film Truck Turner opposite Isaac Hayes in 1974, her only venture into that particular genre, and lent her voice to a wide range of animated projects over the following decades, including Futurama, where she played a member of a comedic group called the Vice Presidential Action Rangers, as well as Gargoyles, in which she voiced the mother of one of the show's lead characters, and Batman, the animated series. She appeared as herself in an episode of The Simpsons in 2004 and played a supporting role as a mother in the film Snow Dogs alongside Cuba Gooding Jr. in 2006. She starred in, produced, and choreographed the independent film Lady Magdalene's, even contributing original songs to its soundtrack. Later television work included a recurring role on NBC's Heroes, playing a grandmother rebuilding her family's life in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, and a daytime Emmy-nominated guest appearance on The Young and the Restless in 2016, proof that her talent and screen presence had lost none of their power even late in her career. Nichols often spoke about the relationships she built on the Star Trek set, describing many of them as some of the most meaningful of her entire career. Her dynamic with William Shatner was complicated at times, marked by real tension on set, but she said in later interviews that the friction eventually gave way to genuine mutual respect once the two of them had time and distance to reflect on what they had built together. Her bond with Leonard Nimoy, by contrast, was steady, warm, and supportive almost from the start. She credited him with treating her consistently as an equal during a period in the industry when very few people extended her that same courtesy, and she said his quiet encouragement helped her feel secure in a role that could otherwise have felt isolating. She also spoke warmly and often about George Takei's humor and lasting friendship, and about DeForest Kelley's calm, even temperament, which she said helped ground the entire cast during long and demanding production schedules that could easily have frayed nerves. That Nichols' fascination with space did not end when the cameras stopped rolling on the original series. After Star Trek concluded, she partnered directly with NASA on a recruitment initiative specifically aimed at bringing more women and people of color into the American Astronaut Corps, a program that far exceeded the space agency's own expectations for its reach and impact. Figures like Dr. Sally Ride, the first American woman in space, Guyon Bluford, the first Black American in space, along with Judith Resnick, Ronald McNair, Charles Bolden, Frederick Gregory, and Lori Garver, all entered NASA's pipeline during this era, and Nichols considered her role in helping open that door among the proudest achievements of her entire life, prouder in many ways than her acting work itself. In 2015, she even flew aboard a NASA research aircraft that studied the upper atmosphere at high altitude, observing Mars and Saturn from a vantage point few civilians ever experience, a full-circle moment for a woman whose fictional voyages had once helped inspire real ones. Away from the screen, Nichols' personal life included both real joy and real heartbreak. She revealed in her memoir that she had a romantic relationship with Gene Roddenberry that ended before Star Trek ever began production, after she learned he was simultaneously involved with a woman named Majel Hudek, who would later become Majel Barrett, Mary Roddenberry, and play nurse Christine Chappell on the series. Nichols later wrote and performed a song titled Gene at Roddenberry's memorial service, a heartfelt tribute to the man who had given her one of the most defining roles of her life, despite the complicated history between them. She was married twice over the course of her life. Her first marriage was to a dancer named Foster Johnson in 1951, and that same year the couple had a son, Kyle Johnson, who would later become deeply involved in caring for his mother in her final years. That first marriage ended in divorce not long after it began. In 1968, she married a man named Duke Mondy, and the two remained together for 4 years before divorcing in 1972. Her personal life also carried real tragedy. Her brother, Thomas, was a longtime member of the Heaven's Gate cult and died in 1997 as part of the group's mass deaths, timed by the group to coincide with the passing of Comet Hale-Bopp. Thomas had reportedly been involved with the group for roughly 2 decades before his death. Amid these difficult chapters, Nichols also experienced moments of genuine joy well into her later years. In February 2012, She visited the White House and met President Barack Obama, who told her, to her surprise and delight, that he had a crush on her when he was younger and openly admitted it when she asked him directly. He also told her he was a devoted fan of Star Trek, a detail that made the encounter feel especially personal for a woman who had spent decades hearing from fans about how much the show had meant to them. In June 2015, Nichols suffered a minor stroke at her home in Los Angeles. She was taken promptly to a nearby hospital, where scans confirmed the stroke had been relatively mild, and she began a course of therapy aimed at aiding her recovery. Though it was not considered severe at the time, it marked the beginning of a more difficult period in her life. In early 2018, it was publicly revealed that Nichols had been diagnosed with dementia, news that saddened fans around the world who had followed her career for decades. As a result of the diagnosis, she chose to step back from public appearances and convention events, a decision she reportedly found difficult given how connected she had always felt to her fans. During this same period, concerns arose over how her personal and financial affairs were being managed by those closest to her, and her son, Kyle Johnson, petitioned for conservatorship in 2018 in order to take a more direct role in her care and decision-making. The conservatorship was formally approved by the court in early 2019, following a period of dispute and concern raised by friends who worried about her well-being and access to visitors during the transition. Nichelle Nichols passed away on July 30, 2022, in Silver City, New Mexico, at the age of 89, due to heart failure. In a fitting final tribute to a woman whose fictional journeys had once inspired real ones, her ashes were later sent into deep space alongside those of Majel Barrett and Star Trek visual effects pioneer Douglas Trumbull, a final voyage for a woman who had spent her entire life reaching for the stars, both on screen and off. Nichelle Nichols did not simply play a character who explored the galaxy. She spent much of her actual life working to make sure that other people, especially those who had rarely been told they belonged among the stars, could reach them too. From a bridge officer who refused to be sidelined, to a tireless NASA advocate who helped open real doors for a new generation of scientists and astronauts, her legacy reaches far beyond the boundaries of a television screen and continues to shape how audiences imagine the future